Good morning, Katrina.
Good morning.
They want us to go at 2:00.
Tomorrow?
Good morning, Joshua.
Good morning. Mhm.
Hold on, I said, okay, it's 2:00. You want to put on your phone, airplane mode now?
Did you use it with airplane?
No, they wouldn't let me, so you have to put it back.
Uh,
Recording in progress.
What? Ah.
Shakyamuni, I prostrate, make offerings, and go for refuge. When, O supreme among humans, you were born on this earth, you paced 7 strides and said, I am supreme in this world. To you who are wise, then I bow. With pure bodies, form supremely fine, wisdom ocean like a golden mountain. Fame that blazes in the 3 worlds, winner of the best supreme guide, to you I bow. With a supreme science, face like a spotless moon, color like gold, to you I bow. You are immaculate, the 3 worlds are not incomparable, wise one, to you I bow. Great compassionate protector, all-knowing teacher, field of merit and good qualities, vast as an ocean, to the Tathagata I bow. Through purity, freeing from attachment, through virtue, freeing from the lower realms. Unique, supreme, ultimate reality, to the Dharma that is peace I bow. Having freed themselves, showing the path of freedom too, well established in the trainings. The holy field endowed with good qualities, to the Sangha I bow. Do not commit any non-virtuous actions, perform only perfect virtuous actions. Subdue your mind completely, this is the teaching of the Buddha. A star, a mirage, a flame of a lamp, an illusion, a drop of dew, a bubble. A dream, a flash of lightning, a cloud, see conditioned things as such. Through this merit may sentient beings attain the state of all-seeing, subdue the foe of faults, and be delivered from the ocean of cyclic existence, perturbed by the waves of aging, sickness, and death. This ground anointed with perfume, flowers strewn Mount Meru, foreland, sun and moon, imagined as a Buddha land and offered to you, may all beings enjoy this pure land, venerable holy gurus. In the space of your truth body, from billowing clouds of your wisdom and love, let fall the rain of the profound and extensive Dharma, in whatever form is suitable for subduing sentient beings. Idam Guru Ragna Mandala Kamyatayami. I take refuge until I have awakened in the Buddhas, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By the merit I create by listening to the Dharma, I will attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings. I take refuge until I have awakened in the Buddhas, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By the merit I create by listening to the Dharma, I will attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings. I take refuge until I have awakened in the Buddhas, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By the merit I create by listening to the Dharma, I will attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings.
잘해.
딕송깼나?
야, 오야, 저야, 다 들이도. 걔도 긴디 가서 봐. 긴디 땡지 가서 송데 내용도. 어디 동반이 꼴이야, 그래 봐. 어디 가서도서나. 가든 처음에 연구 연기서. 가다데 저 처음에 연구도 가르쳐 동반이 들어선 거라. 가든 처음에 연구 연기에서 알아. 어느 때 가서 가든 처음에 연구 연기에서 랑스 준직 때문에 수수직 수샤는 동반이서 숑을 맞은 버치 띵적 말해서 거다. 가든 처음에 Ningu Yinji Ransu Zunsik di Mai, Susu Ji Soshan, Zunji Soshan Jigma Sungora. Oh, any dinner she casa. Shinda Chimbi Shishun Yinji se, Riva. Shinda Chimbu Ludu da Tomila Sobatu Sigora. Shinda Chimbi Shishun Yinji. Lumbu Ngao Tritimai, Lumbu Sungi Geshe Yeshe, Jigachi Lapsha, Tindra Mare Sigora. Lumbu Ngao Tritimai, Ngao Jigachi Lapsha. Shungla Kuma Ducha, Artira. Any casa. Lame Chaju Marati Mare casa. Oh, Ticasera. Kedu Dambe. Kedu Dambe Nyamyo is Kedu Dambazo Nyamsu Lane, T Nyamyo Nema Shasha Squad Esgora, Kedu Dambe Nyamyo in Jesse. Oh, Tene, Kedu Dambe Nyamyo in Ye. And the Casa. Kedu Dambe Nyamyo in Ye. Sasi, Tunatima is Sabasab Chasa, Taras Society Char, and it tipa Nyamyo the torch and the tipa Shasha. Sarisira, Shura Temple Mangi. Now I just had to take any Tombani nasal tattoo dearest by Shasera. No tender mother Sarah. Punatemai. Lami Chanju Sulami is Lana Mebe Sanjay Kobantobola Shulam Sama Dosaki Lamgate Remato Serva. And in Yamne Tuna Timaese. Cheva Tane Meba the Cheddar Losona and Yamga. Any Yanga you get it on Yasola Tujila Soba Yanga Vishura. Oh, tender my image of God is this on the oh, yeah, this election.
So here to begin, the great adept and master Gendun Tenzin Gyatso has said, and this is speaking about emptiness really, it says, it is the essence of the unerring Kangyur and Tengyur. So here, really the essence of those texts is this teaching on emptiness, unlike the false made up teachings of others. So this is not something that has been made up or fabricated in some way, but is rather based upon, it is the essence of the unerring Kangyur and Tengyur. And it represents the views of the great philosophers, the great trailblazers, unlike the speech of fools. So here, this contains the kind of teachings given by the great trailblazers or philosophers, Nagarjuna and Asanga. And so those who have realized this, it's something that is the view that accords with theirs, not the sort of speech of foolish people. And it contains the realized experience of learned adepts. So here, this is based upon the kind of experience of those who have put this into practice, unlike the frenzied delusions of others. So it's not something that is based upon the kind of like random appearances that arise to those who are unstable in their meditation, but rather is something that is based upon the experience of those who have put this into practice. And it is the great road to supreme enlightenment, unlike the terrifying abyss of samsara. So here, this is the sole path traversed by all of those who have gone to enlightenment in the past. It is something where we should be careful to avoid the kind of nihilism that would lead to falling into the terrifying abyss of the lower realms. And so here, speaking again about emptiness, this is really a summary of the kind of importance of this and also what it is grounded in.
Oh, yeah. Oh, that and that got some good as an Tanda de Sanje because a cut attention Samage. So share to the new body caressana. Tungele trash, the Koya Tungele trash to Sungara. Did you get you to Tombani tree to the Sungara? Tumba Sanje someday the church in somebody somewhat of the Roa. Any convention somewhere. Koya Tungele trash to this. This our day. Tenzin into Tenzin gain, she never Tombani. That shown some of it, got a tell you some time. And then you would at the Tirese, Tattoo Tombani tree and the Sungara. Sure, somewhat some attention, Deputy let some the Sungaras, Tattoo the Tombani tree with Sungara. Oh, the Tombani to the pay a Kachambure, Tina, Shindachambuludu, that Tomila Soba, symptom Betawana, Tomeda, Uma Betawana, Ludu Chess Rane, Shung to the Zoch and the Telekung to share with the Esgora. Telemandrin is also Tombani Mabuchare or what Chirubale Mabuchayora. 수참아 까게 동바 공교래. 와, 데베 수다 지 다들 뭐지? 데베 내류 로줄에 서버트서 강가를 껴다니 야부메도 좀 동바 공교래. 땅마도 야부래 샤섬. 지나시 수긴 두시가고요라. 아니 셰바에 두시가 빼야잖아. 남과 타에 남시 타에 지에메스 도저 동바시 공교래. 공예. 디 공샤네 아두고라. 디디 동바 공교래. 코에 자와신 게 녀모 그 자와신 게 동바티 당진게 소원나시 디 공교라. 디 공교 말아. 디 손자 시지바도 야도나 양자 코알마 개용거라. 마우다스야 티칠람.
So here, as for the meaning of this verse, really all of the speech of the Buddha and the Kangyur and the Tengyur, the essence of that is for getting us out of samsara, for alleviating those sufferings of samsara. And so really it is getting at that root, eliminating that kind of conceived object of our ignorance that is the source of all of those sufferings. And so all of the teachings that the Buddha give are for leading to emptiness, for coming to an understanding of dependent arising and emptiness. And so the meaning of those texts is extremely important. It is something that allows us to get out of samsara. And it is, again, not something that is a kind of false or made up teaching, but rather traces back to those great trailblazers, Nagarjuna and Asanga. Those that follow the mind-only school tenets follow after Asanga, and those that follow the middle way follow after Nagarjuna. But this is something that is a meditation that is grounded in those kinds of authentic texts, rather than something like meditating on a kind of emptiness that is just the absence of form. For example, there are those higher states within, like, say, the material and immaterial realms in which these meditators have meditated on a version of emptiness, but it is not the kind of emptiness that actually eliminates the root of samsara. They might achieve this sort of elimination of those desire realm objects, or even transcend the coarse levels of consciousness and achieve states like all the way to the peak of samsara, this kind of like infinite space, infinite consciousness, nothingness, and so forth. But they aren't meditating on the kind of emptiness that counteracts the root of samsara. So here, unlike that, these authentic teachings on emptiness give us the means to be able to extricate ourselves from samsara.
야, 뒤 동반이 꼴이야. 그 개발술에 손주 매도 마보여라. 뒤때도 내내 숑가바 콩도 있나야. 원불로도 다로 로빈 파발라 소바와 또 숑리야. 콩도제. 근데 동반이 제네 뜻을 제고여라. 뒤인도 갈소라. 들은가도 돼. 다니 뭐 코에 동엘에 타로 쳐도 동반이 공고여라. 대안에 라치부 코에 동엘에 타와서 많이 봐. 심지어 탐제 코에 동엘에 타와치 tumgengi 누가 연gengi 그것에 연대 군대지 가서질 줄아자 아삼. 대체도네 동반이 제거로 동반이지 로빈 파바 루투비. 로아니 숨바다 오마른 진청아 값을 빼게시게 봤송고야라. 대술에 터바체 삼바체네. 동반이 또네 코알레 라니 코알레 트토바 대자 많이 봤음진 셴탐제자 코알레 트와차 능gengi 그것에 연대 군대지 네바 용수 속에 강사실은 줄어자 냠도 네 불로세 담네 셈바쇼스 어디래.
So here, there are many different sort of explanations of emptiness, but really those that can be relied upon are those that trace back to the teachings of Nagarjuna and Asanga and so forth. If you're searching for the correct meaning of emptiness, one should search in those kinds of texts with such an origin. And so in order to get out of samsara, we need this realization of emptiness. But here, we shouldn't just be concerned with our own liberation, but thinking that in order to be able to benefit all sentient beings, I need to attain the state of Buddhahood, in which I have removed all faults and developed all good qualities, completely perfected my abilities to be able to benefit others. And this too is dependent upon a correct understanding of emptiness. So here, thinking with that kind of motivation, that the presentation of emptiness that is here within the precious Garland is one that is quite extensive, and we are studying this kind of presentation of emptiness in order to be able to achieve that state of Buddhahood, again, in which you have removed all faults, you have developed all good qualities, and have the complete ability to be able to benefit others. And so for that purpose, please set a motivation thinking that we are listening to these teachings in order to be able to bring about such benefit for other sentient beings.
오야 당연히 되라. 가서라. 되래. 근데 시기도 다대야 로사르바 뭐고 참마 탐제테 계지직 때마다 계지 이발이야 나 주베 담부 계지데 되게 말해세. 네 계지 계셔서로. 대 뭐고 마트도 소라 계지직 되게 요나 대 계지마데 네 랑원에 주바랑 신지 주바래 시거라. 계지직 되게 요나로 계지 이발을 메도바 계지직 되게 요나 계지직을 되게 계지마데 네 랑원에 주바 랑신지 주바 랑게 뭐 주바래 시거라. 어디 인도시나스 다들이야 계지 마치 대야 랑신지 되게 좀 말해서 바 까빠치 와라 말해서 디카레스 지들 계지 타요바 지들 계지 타요바 에네 가란 직대 계지 네바 민세 지들 계지 타요바세 계지 마텔라야 랑게 계지 타마다 타마요레 타마요데 담보요레 바바요레 소라 계지 마치리나야 그 계지 식당장 잡아 계지같이 치주매가 된대요 말했으거라 계지 마치 랑게 차셔서 집에 계지 타마요레 바바요레 담보요 그래서거라 계지 타요바 지들 계지 마텔라야 랑게 계지 타마요바 대신도 계지 니바다 바바다 담보도 요래서라 지대 계지 내바 미사 너 심바타에 대해서 정말 요래서라 정말도 의다 다 정말 요래서 어디인데 참여기 뭐 메시버래서 계지 참여에 쓰기요 말에 두대 참여에 쓰기요 말와 참여해보지요 말에 착하시지요 차제 연구를 해서 그랬단다 니주진직된 리스트다 수준다 두션이 디셰거라 너진직된다 주지 심전을 속바 풍부가를 속대주 상망시거라 너스들 롱체체 지된지 감데시거라 주스들 때라 롱체바부 강사시거라 된다 롱체체다 주바부 상마시거라 니주진직된 디상마시 수전도 송대소라 네 깨지마 랑신기 내바 말에 깨지치야 그나 깨지치야 랑원에 주베 수지 내바 말에서거라 디가서래 지들 깨지 타여바 지대 깨지 내 마이세 지대지 내로롱질라 소바토도 깨지치 랑신기 주바 내바 여바 말에서거라 가르스나서라 근데 차다 잡으면서 오라 뉴주게 지텐데 계지직 랑신기 내봐 요바 마힘바탈서로 말해서라 대 교산들 가르고 그러시나 랑게 차셰서 주베 계지 숨게 땅이 셈에 차셰에 매셔서라 그 계지직마도 잔이 지기 맹게지 요 말을 랑 친데는 그 계지 숨게 땅이 셈이 연구를 거라 차셰에서 다 된다 계지네 계지 차카셔셔오라 걔네 뒤텐데비시네 그 뒤텐게 착하셔요. 뭐 강가에나 차제 손자 랑원에 주바데 용거 말던다. 참망보질을 제네 코파 따고요라. 참망보질을 때는 바 따주선 디나네 찔을 주고 주서 요거 말해. 찌기 랑원에 주바질란데르세네 그 참망보고야 요 말아. 차제에서 용거 말아. 어디서요라. 뉴주게 직된 대출전에서라. 계지 랑신기 내봐 여봐 말해서래 가르스네 랑게 차셔서 주베 계지 숨다 제베 차제를 해서거라 계지 내봐 민수도 계지 찌랑을 주베 내가 말해 가르스네 대체 계지 숨당니세 관계 지나 계지 숨기 당이 쟁be 차제래서 오라 지대 계지 내봐매 어디 손전 지대 계지 당보데 계지 참이 찍을야 내봐 말레스 야 딘데도 해 가지 또 스마도 쳐서 야
So here, turning to the text, now we had gone through, and this is beginning in verse 69, talking about the kind of syllogism here. I'll read this verse, which says, just as one conceives of a moment as having a last part, so too one should conceive of it as having a beginning and middle. Since a moment has a threefold temporal nature, the world does not remain even for a moment. So according to some of those kind of realists, they would assert that there is a moment in time that is intrinsically or inherently established, is established from its own side, that remains. And so the response to that is then that, well, this has to be divided into multiple parts. All of these things, whether we are talking about partless particles that one would want to assert, or temporal moment, there is no possibility for there to be something that is partless, that doesn't have various parts. So just as we would assert that a moment has an end and therefore a beginning and a middle, and therefore having that kind of tripartite nature means that it can't remain. It doesn't have any sort of intrinsic staying or remaining. And so when it comes to the kind of external environment as well as the beings within it, one would have to say that it doesn't remain intrinsically for even a moment, because it is something that has parts. So here, when we look at whether it is, again, the external kind of environment and the various things that are enjoyed by beings, or the beings within them, one can't identify something that intrinsically exists as a partless thing. Like, there isn't a kind of moment that can even remain for a moment intrinsically, given that that moment can further be divided into various parts, into a beginning, middle, and end. And so because this is something that is merely designated on a collection of parts, but it can't be found, like you can't identify one single intrinsically existent thing, then therefore we can't say that it is intrinsically existent. So in the same way that we've already refuted those kinds of partless particles, as in that is not something that is suitable to exist, suitable to posit, so too, when it comes to temporal moments, one might want to assert that that moment is intrinsically existent, but yet it can be further divided into beginning, middle, and end, and thereby doesn't have any intrinsic existence.
Oh yeah, when this is the Tunji Tamatera, Toma Uda Tamayas, etc. Toma Uda Tamayas, Karsigorasana. Kichimati, Tomata Uda Tamas, Kichi Chasum Yabon, the Chasum Butiswara. Toma Uda Tamaya. Kichi Shindu Sambarsha, Kichi Rewate, Rashiki Tuba Maiba Shindo, Roa, Netezoya, Tama Sum Kichi Sumbutiasua, Rashan Kanle Chance, Tada Shan Kanle Chan, Rangune Tuba Suji Kigmares ora. Tale Kavaside, Randang Ochibe. Gyulekiwa, ya gyudusu yone kiwa tsora. Nengo tadebe gyulekiwa, rangwene trube shenle kiwa ser. O tada shen kangle jang, ane rangshen ki nebe kiwa mare sora. O toma uda tama ya, geje shindu sambar chaase, rangshen ki truba kiwa meba de sambar chaase. Kare sine ko chayubare sora. Toma uda tama ni, rangshen Lekin Yomais, or the Kiji Sumbutia, the Ranshin Jituba Yoba Mara, the Chada Jevares, or a Chajesonda. Oh, Tisonda Chaja invasion at that and Ranshin Jituba Mares, Titukuda. Yeah, won't do that.
So here then it continues in 70 saying, as with a moment, one should also consider the tripartite nature of its beginning, middle, and a last part. There is no beginning, middle, or last that arises from itself or something else. So here, the subject then is this kind of, we should consider how even a moment has then this tripartite nature of being there is a beginning, there is a middle, and there is an end. And so in the way that each moment, again, is not intrinsically existent, so too, it can't be born, it can't arise from some intrinsically, itself intrinsically that has been negated, nor can it arise from an intrinsically existent other. So here, again, this is really establishing that because it possesses parts in the way that a single moment possesses parts, one should examine then the beginning, the middle, and the end of that moment is also possessing parts. And thereby, this refutes then any sort of intrinsic establishment. Having refuted something, a thing that has no parts, one can then establish that there is no intrinsic existence.
Oh, yeah, 어디더라. 다티와 마트더라. 타대 초치를 찍고 민세들도 수전지 뭐부터 주시거라. 까와본벌 소바 가리나 뒤 가리나 시거라. 수전지 뭐부터 주시거라. 아니 타대 초치를 찍고 민세도 수전지 뭐부터 주 강가. 아니 찍고를 템바트가 말해. 템바트에 찍 말해서 야. 찍고를 템바트에 쓰지 쭉 말해서. 가르스나 아니 찍고 민세도 처음에 반에 가면 가르스네 초타대바 마보다 제비 다 차다 제비 치시거라 지부 된바 마인데 초타대바 다 제비 치르세 처음에 반에 가야 매세 근데 지미 반에 도마다 여범에서 뒤래 되네 다 마주베 겨요 말해세 야 초타대바 다 초타 제비 치세 수전 연구부 간대지네 시구라 수전 처음에 반에 미스베 치시거라 어디 담마데 처음에 반에 가야 매세더라 수전 영어벌이야 초 예예 땡월에 소바던데 처음에 병거부 요 말으시거라 처음에 반에 가야 매세 지미 반에 도마다 지미 반에 도마다 하시라 되니까 수전 처음에 반에 가야 매세 아니 도마르 때노 시나세 다 같이라 지부 템바 매나 도마응 올이야 템바 두고르스나 어때야 두고 말으시거라 도마르 템바 많이 되세 지미 반에 도마 당하셔야 돼 여여 말으세 도매응 올에 두고르스나 템바 두고세 두고 말으세 식 템바 두베 직 매베세 템바 두베 도마 매데 템바 두베 직 매베세거라 템바 두베 직 많이 되세 네 템바트베 도마 마인데 템바트베 직 매베체사 캡테 시고라 처음에 반에 가면 지미 반에 도마다 여바 매바 여바 매세 니까시라 도마 테노 시나 도마 템바 마인데 템바트베 직 매베체 다데 그 템바트베 직 까사나네 마부 여바데 코 까투그라 뭐제 템바트베 직 도마 매데 찍 매베시서라 캡데 찍매 반에 도마 매베시서 찍매나 도마 요토 마르와 뭐부 찍매나 템바 tum게 찍도 템바 두바 매나 아니 소소와 도마 템바 두바테 용고 마레시거라 수제지 다 수제지 뭐부 전에 아니 샹당 뭐부 참마 탐절이야 찍다 두드레지 따게 되지도 찍다 두드레지 땡지게 땡중 거고 있노세 어디래 다통다 수전이 뭐 강가초제 템바트베 치도 마투디 시오라 템바트베 도만 마투디 템바트베 치케베 시서거라 템바트베 치케나네 도마요요 마레세라 야 되게지래
So here, then turning to verse 71, and so it says then, no material thing is a unitary whole. because it has many directional parts, and there is no material thing that does not have directional parts. Further, without there being one, there cannot be many. Without the existent, there cannot be the non-existent. So here it uses the example of things having a form and says that it is not, those things are not established as a single entity, right? So they are not established truly as a single thing. And that is because it has parts. And there is no fault that the sign is not established, because again, we've established previously that anything, particularly those having form, is going to have various parts. Something without parts is impossible, is a non-existent. So when a thing has form, then it is going to have right, left, above, below, and so forth. Thereby, it has parts, different parts. And so here, it is not possible for there to be something that lacks those directional parts, but something that has form. And so if one wants to say, well, it's not truly existent as a singular thing, but then it is truly existent as multiple things. Well, here, that is also not an acceptable proposition, as if one were to say, well, it's truly existent as multiple. It can't be truly existent as multiple, because we've already refuted that there is something that is a singular that is truly established. And so therefore there is pervasion there. If there is, without being something like a singular thing that is truly established, if you have refuted the true existence of a singular thing, then there's no way that you can have different individual entities that are truly established. So here, this is really demonstrating the reasoning of refuting there being one and many. Again, if there is a singular truly existent that has been refuted, then one cannot assert that there are multiple truly existent things. And so here, this on the basis of using things having form, this then illustrates how the reasoning of not being one or multiple, being free of one or multiplicity, then refutes true establishment.
오야 다또다도 가르치고라서나 수르비나 뒤도 주바시나 코란 직장냐마도 매개치 뒤로와 매개를 뒤치 주제요 말을 된다. 예다 땡다 오다서 뒤에 참여까지 선택하고도 뒤에 가르치나 뒤에 충수되어 있나야 기대 되느라 에네 콜이야 디조 초치와래 포조 초치와래 땡기 초초로 초치와래 초시다 참시제 개 용초라 쿠파조리베 뒤쟁외도 수조렉 말와 수조리베 외도 파조렉 말와 근데 그 착하셔지면은 뒤고로 두게요 말을 된다 수전인고 컨디션이야 근데 그 차다 망보다 제버시 예외변에 다들 시에는 뒤쟁직 탄에 뒤쟁 두기 거로 인해서구라 두기 지저셔는 다들 두로 인지래 뒤쟁지데 기대 지셔라 탄에 땡다 오다 예다 노다 제 참제 강가 뒤쟁 바꿔대 연해서구라 그 타니 부시 대요나 아니 그 내내 기대 지 대요나 내 기대요나 내 강가 저 디델레 된del레 말아 코데스데 데 카셰지오라 콘저치게 질 두고 말아 예 땡다 오다 강가 자 차카셰지 매버지 뒤된 뒤고를 두여요 말에 자 차제래도 와세 다들 뒤에서 봤다도 대졸을 때는 봤다고 알아 뒤는 참매게 질 그런 영향 거요 말아 어제서 뒤에 참매요 말에서 오라 참매게 근데 참매게 매대서 차제에나 랑원에 주바 랑와 되고 말아 랑원에 주바는 콜 로바 거고요 말에 코코랑원에 수주 뒤에 참매는 가랑 위에서 로바 먹어시지 차신 먹어시 다 로바시도 차신다 먹어시 고라치 주에 와라 뒤에지 예예지 고시자 매버지 요나니 템버 주바르데 근데 요 말에 칭업을 샤나 뒤도 주를 샤나 대선다 뒤가고 와라 차제에서 로바 카시 매나코 민단에 두에 거려 말아 어디지람나 치료증업 가래 강바이나다 생동이나다 어디 모자이나다 강가 참아보도와 대단에 들은 총총총르다나 뒤 인신제 들라고 예예 땡 오다도 가가 맹게지 뒤쪽에요 말해 뒤 여자네 바명단에 뒤에서 도고와라 니 전부 차도라 뒤에 참에 요네 전부 차도 말해 잠불이 좁도 말해 뒤에 참매버시나 델리지 토스나 팀도라 배치버 차도라 딘데스 뒤에 토스나 디델레 말아 저 체르로야라 현달에서 체르로야라 뒤에 참에 요네 찔리 토스나 팀도네 데 뒤에 토스나 콘 델레 강갈레도라 딜레 말아 제선자 코 뒤에 참에 요나니 잠불 코라 두여요 말해 체르라요 말아 뒤에 담보 총수디 참에나 대선자 뒤에 간데시네 고예 땡요 뒤에 차다 제버 거래 뒤에 현다지 투스나 고 체르로 마도 코텔 템리 찍바 배기도 찍버려요 말아 대선자 랑원에 두배 뒤에 찍랑원에 두배시요 말아 뒤에 찍지 랑원에 두배 찍간간지 두토고요나 아니 랑원에 두배 도마 요쇼라 마보 요쇼라 랑원에 두배 찍매나 마보 용토 말아 지단에 찍매나 도마 용구 말아 대체네 시에요라 뒤질람나야 어디 가자
So here, if something has a form, then it is dependent upon the aggregation of various particles. But when we begin to examine those particles or those atoms that make up things that have form, even the smallest particle or smallest atom that we could get to has to have parts in order to establish, like, in order for there to be the existence of larger material things, those particles cannot be partless. There's no way to assert, I mean, there would be no way for that particle to be established as something that has no parts whatsoever. So here, if we have like even the smallest kind of atom that we want to look at, there are still different sort of sides to that. There has to be a kind of directionality in order that those particles can aggregate. If there is no parts to the smallest particle, then how would it be possible for them to actually conglomerate into larger kinds of form? And so here, when we say that there is no establishment of partless particles that exist like from their own side in this truly existent way or intrinsically existent kind of particle, this is really saying that there cannot be something that is just established from its own side, established autonomously without the need for others, in this case without the need for parts. Here, if something is truly established or has that kind of existence in and of itself, in its own right, then it doesn't need to rely upon anything else. It's sort of singular and self-sustaining in and of itself. But here, when we are talking about external phenomena that are established from the aggregation of various particles, in order for those to be able to aggregate, to collect together, they have to not be partless. If you have this kind of situation, I mean, even if we get down to the very smallest particle, there still has to be sort of different sides to that. Otherwise, how can it connect with another particle? Unless we can distinguish like this side from that side, it would essentially lead to like no possibility of aggregation, just things collapsing in on each other. So there's no way that one can assert that phenomena that are externally established that have form are somehow the aggregation of partless particles. For something to become larger, they need to assert that there are various parts, that this side of that is going to connect to that side of that. Otherwise, again, they would sort of collapse in on each other, just becoming a single thing. And so when we can determine that there is no such particle, partless particle or partless atom that can exist from its own side, because again, having that kind of existence in and of itself from its own side autonomously means that it doesn't rely upon anything else. including having parts. And so if we can through logic, determine that there is no such partless particle, there isn't a single truly existent kind of particle, then how could there possibly be multiple truly existent particles? If one has refuted that kind of singular truly existent particle from existing, then that also negates there being some kind of multiple truly existent particles.
오야 되네시다 계질래시 버와 지르기 내르 론줄라 소바 대조고 유르게 전도요라 수대도를 잘 소바 강가 내진 지대다 주기 신비에 강가 고 유부지도요라 자고 요르데 고 계지 유부지도요라 전에 계지시 나마다 치마치 맹게시 고치 강야지 수투에시 요마라 계지 뭐뭐 인신제들 강바르지나다 가르네 수네다 코바 계지 같이 치오데 다콜 나마 치마치주 맹게게 근데 지 연구요 말어 그런 제마들 지 가르네 질레 연구라 땅마들 지어라 근데 그 계지들 차치주 맹게지 요 말은 유아도게 뭐 강가리야 계지 나마다 치마다 세텐데 가르쳐 가지고 계지 통도 세나고 고라야에 따다 치고올지 맹게지 용해요 말아 자 계지 참에대 연구요 말아 계지 생업부터 인신제들 꼭 가셔야지 되는 아주 수월해지네 계지 가셔야지 미가 통거라 계지 찍마도 매네 통해 용 말아 그 남산 도시 통토 말아 그 대대요라 시다 공가지 치마지 계지 참에요 말아 된다 뭐뭐 간대지나 수다 들으래 저래서 뭐뭐 간대지나 그 요아도도자 나마다 치마지다 될네 거요도 마도 그 나마 치마지에 매국의 직장장 주베시 오마르 되네 템바투 바den도라 라운에 투바den도라 콜로로바치에 고요 마라 수다티로 수르치네 그 니케지치데 가도다 입다 강가 차신다 요로 예 계지치네 수이나 그저 대다 계지 춘주이나야 이제 로바 가에 매게지 고 마라 다 간다데 돈다데 가라주 류이나야 류레 차셔 망보여라 고네 제치즈네 간디 파도 차셔 망보도와 대달레 때네니 류스와샤고라 어디나신고 참아 차다 제바 덕시지고라 차다 제바다 차셔르 지고요라 텔레테네니 파타니 샤고데 직장장지이나네 그 현다 로고 고마 덕시도 요마라 코나 직장장 카도 주고 주사치고라 데 라무네 투바 인고라 라와도 투바 코나 라와르 수치를 로바 기고야 요마라 라와도 투바로 라무네 투바 랑고모 투바레 코 코랑고네 수투르마도 로바 고고 요마라 어디래 계속다 라무네 투바 요마라서 어디가 요라 돈다 수다테르레 잘서바 가리이나야 주전치나 그 뒤쳐야 돼 주전 참여시 요마레서 계시계시 요체비나 계시 참여시 요마레서 이제 매제 닥시다 차셔다 찔러 뜨진 달네 죽고도 한거 컨디션이나 다 체를 차셔나 강바세로 모터세로라 남두세로 뜻 강갈파 차샤다 차매버지 로버 매신 거 두에매도 어때선다 랑위네 매버서 라와도 두어 매세 뜻거라 라와도 두어 매세 샬라 뜨진 달데 죽고라 땡진 대버리 좋아서도 땡진 대버리 좋아서 자고 라와도 두어 용고 말아 랑위네 두어 용고 말아 라신지 두어 랑게 뭐 두어 용고 말아 어디 최탐제 집어래 야 담만다 쳐서 어디 찔러 아니 되더라 맞아
So here, in the same way that all of those things that have form, we can establish that they are not built from these kind of partless particles, as having something partless is impossible. So too, when it comes to temporal moments, when we think about all of the various kind of things that we enjoy, all of these things that come into existence, they are changing moment to moment to moment. They don't remain. There isn't some kind of truly existent moment that then transforms or changes. If something has that kind of existence from its own side or is truly existent, then it couldn't change. And so we see that for all of these phenomena, in the same way that things that are have form, have material form, are merely designated upon a collection of parts, so too with all of these kind of changing phenomena, phenomena, they don't have those kinds of temporally partless moments that comprise them, but rather if we try to search for the like smallest moment, even that has to have a beginning, middle, and end. And so here, if it were the case that there were sort of truly established moments, we wouldn't actually, a moment is so short, we wouldn't be able to perceive those. We perceive the kind of continuity of that, in that those moments have a temporal kind of connectivity. But all of these things, form, sound, taste, smell, touch, all of that is dependent upon other phenomena. They don't have that kind of autonomous existence wherein they don't need to depend or be sort of helped out by any other phenomena. They don't have that kind of existence that is autonomous or in and of themselves in their own right. And so here, when we think about, like, for example, our body is composed of all of these various different parts, and in dependence upon that collection of parts, we designate this body. But then if we try to point to the thing that is that body, we can't actually find it. There's nothing that we can point to, but yet there is a body as something that is designated upon a various collection of parts. And so if something, if it is either a particle or a moment of time, has that kind of autonomous existence from its own side in and of itself, then it doesn't need to depend upon any others. It doesn't need to depend upon parts or temporal moments and so forth. And that kind of existence is not findable. We can't look at that, whether it is the kind of external things that we observe, form, sound, smell, taste, touch. It is dependently designated upon a collection of parts. So here, this really gets at that meaning of dependent and interconnected. All phenomena are the same in that they are dependent upon others, parts and so forth, as well as being designated in this way, wherein they are designated upon a collection of parts. And that basis of designation is not the thing itself, but is rather a mere name or a mere label. And so here we should understand that this kind of investigation is to eliminate that thought that things like temporal moments or particles could have this kind of true establishment.
Oh yeah, that ngô su chay ne kare na temba tuba ro rama tu tube chik yo mare si wara rama tu tube chik yo mare si kare sin sama chache re si wara rama tu tube chik yo na shenda mewe se rama tu tube chik kyang kyang si ko ra chashe mambu i menge tindi si ko yo ra rama tu tube chik me na chik me de chache imbe chik si wara chada chebe chik rama tu tube chik ke so na rama tu tube tuma yung mare si mambu rāngā tu trūpa yung mārē, tenpa trūpa chik kek sāra bāsi gōrā. O tende chende trūpa gōrā, chik tu tenki tenji sāra gōrā. Dikito, bānda kāngba tabu choche, ya mī lū tabu choche, tenpa trūpa chik tu mā trūti chache himbe chirisi gōrā, chā māmbu gōrā. Chik yine ko chik kyang kyang chik trūya gōrā. Tuma trūku mārē se, kārē se na, chik kek sāra, tenpa trūpa chik himba chik kena, māmbu himba te trūku mārā. Oh, tendency to be a teacher loves you and yeah.
So, whatever thing it is, whether we are talking about something having form or anything else, it cannot be truly existent here because it depends upon parts. And so here, if you refute that there could be a truly existent singular thing, then that also refutes the possibility of having truly existent multiples. So here, we could take the example of any sort of phenomena, a house or a person, whatever it might be, and assert, well, it's not truly established, not truly existent, because that thing has parts. If it is dependent upon something else for its existence, we can't assert it to be truly existent. And when you have refuted a singular truly existent thing, then that negates the possibility of there being truly existent multiples.
Oh yeah, that much to love yeah. Oh, Diane did tobacco water. Well,
숙제
그래서
denton rang신기 유도 디르베.
또 숙제 라시기 다양데서 요라 같이 도바고 요라 안에 수고랑 랑원에 매나야 랑원에 주베 동바데 랑원에 요라 바시고라 다디야 내로 탑주치 요고도 생각만 보여라 가시고라 추이 담바 주세 동바데 랑원에 동바데 담바 주고래서 랑원에 동바데 담바 마주나 랑원에 동바데 담바 마주나 아니 랑원에 주바데 주고래서 근데 생각해라 다 다들 개발 마부터 송거라 추이 담바 주에 동이 담바 주버려서 군주배 쳐도 담바 주 말해서 어디나시다데 도바체요라 라시 매바데 동이라 랑원에 매바데 담바 주고도 와서 다 랑원에 여바데 매바이나 랑원에 매바데 담바 주버려서 어디 말해서 최제 동시 최제 소다 제로를 잘라서 버텨서 랑원에 맞으나 대대게 춘이 랑한테 주버시고 말해서 땡 코란데 랑원에 주버 매발라 텔 템바 땡게 랑원에 주버 랑한테 주버시고 말해서 디세기도 어디지람나 안돼.
So then there comes a kind of qualm that arises for some. They would say that, okay, well, even though we've established that like things having form are empty of true existence, that emptiness of true existence is inherently established. There are those that would assert that this ultimate reality needs to be existent or sort of established by its own intrinsic nature. So here, this they sort of have this qualm in thinking that, well, if it isn't, although those phenomena like form and so forth are not truly established, that ultimate nature itself, that dharmata or that kind of sphere of phenomena, that ultimate reality must be truly established. Now, here, this in the way that there is no truly established or intrinsically established forms, so too that form's lack of intrinsic establishment is itself not intrinsically established. So basically here, that lack of true existence, if the supported thing lacks true existence, then the support, as in this emptiness that is that basis, is also empty of any kind of true establishment or inherent establishment.
야, 다들아 식과 암내 년보에서도 식과 안에 년보 식과 암내 년보에서 식과 안에 년보에 여행에 매발을 주장나서 어디 가르치고 그래서는 뭐뭐 아니 랑식이 식과 뭐뭐 랑식이 주바데 식바데 현다지가 년보지가 봐 매발 쓰고 요르다 근데서는 가르치는 매발 쓰고 요래서시라 뭐뭐 랑식 그 식반에 토에 좀 발라서 같은데서는 봐 매발 쓰고 요르다 티하나 티년보를 지금 봐 매발 쓰고 요래서라 뭐뭐 랑식이 주바데 쓰고 요르다 텔레콘 년보시다 고야요 말아 뭐보랑 신지 두 번째 번째 버스나 권예보다 된데 좀 버셔야라 어디서다 식바 안에 년보에 아니 여행이 매번 주잖아 랑신지 여바데 매바데 컨디션에 예배 식바적으로 되 고라 현다지 신도다 예보 검내 식으래 가르치려 쓰거라 뭐보랑 신디 쓰거라 식바 안에 토에 좀 발라서 같이 그래다 야 랑신지 랑신지 여바데 가르치는 매바 컨디션 오래서라 뭐 랑신지 여바데 직바데 좀버시고 말해서라 년비 직버시고 말해서 가서 랑신지 여바데 세게 말해요 말해서라 시과염내 년보에 매니 매벌 지다를 줘서 랑신지 여바데 요 말아 매는 코들이 토에 좀 했다 년비 좀 해서 말아 매번 유타나서 수트와티더라 어텔이야 여바 시바 마인셔 지과 암내 년비 지다를 줘서 어때 랑신지 여바데 시바를 매바도와 미시바레서 여바 시바 마인셔 랑신지 여바데 시가 말해 디매네 텔이야 아니 지과 생게 년보그 지과 시야다 토에 지과 시야 텐데 지다를 줘도 지과 제고 말해서 다 tonda ngobo 신지 주바 집에 매버 속여라 ngobo 신지 주바데 매버 속여요 말아 그 매매라 그 삼내 따뜻이 매버 속으로 가데 속여라 시가라 ngobo 신지 여바데 매버 계속 말아 그럼 매버 히라 매발에 여번 생겨라 아주 랑신지 랑와도 주바지 매나 여번 생겨라 여번 진벨로데 매버 속으로 마도 랑신지 여바데 매버 속여야 해요 말아 랑신지 여번 진바데 매버 속으로 삼바데 디스요라 식방하는 예보에 매 예니 매번 주트나서 추트와테 요라 그 랑신지 여바데 세워라 예보 그 식바다 가르 식부치그래 디 오데 랭전 여바 시바 마이시르 지바암네 예베치다요 랑신지 여바데 미시바라 디 지바시야데 토아다 예볼라 속에 지바시더 시고데 지바시고 마 코라 요마라 랑원에 주베 다 요마라 tonda 랑신지 주베 속다테 잘서 요마라 티 요마르 티 지바시고 야게 요마 메메라 그 삼거라네 티 동반이시데 랑신 여바데 매바 칸데 샤우르스 팅가즈 매바게 속고 마라 랑원에 주바이 매발라 여번 집에 로데 매바 속거라 랑원에 주바 요마르 매나 여바스 지거라 디삼데 로데게 집바나시 랑신지 주바 요마르스 매바데 또그마도 랑신지 여바데 집바시고 요마라 디지스도야
So then, coming in verse 72, and here the first half of this verse is sort of a qualm and then the answer to it. So here it says, the existent becomes non-existent because it either ceases on its own or is counteracted by something else. But since the existent is impossible, how could there be its cessation or counteragent? So here, one is thinking, this kind of individual is thinking that somehow this inherent or intrinsic existence is what is destroyed by an antidote. So they think that, well, there is like an object, a thing is its destruction, maybe like through a hammer or something, like if we have a pot or a pillar or something and we broke it with a hammer, that would be something that would destroy that inherent existence that it has. Now here, one needs to recognize that there is no inherent existence whatsoever. It isn't something that exists that is then subsequently destroyed, but rather we are grasping at things as having a kind of existence which they don't have. And so it is an antidote to that grasping that we need to implement, not an antidote to intrinsic existence. That intrinsic existence is non-existent. It is something that has never existed. And so we need to eliminate our grasping at that, but it isn't as though that kind of intrinsic existence is somehow destroyed or undermined, counteracted by a particular kind of antidote, because something that is intrinsically existent is not possible at all. And so here, when it comes to this particular verse, it is talking about how there is no intrinsically existent person. There is no intrinsically existent form, sound, smell, taste, touch, and so forth. It's not as though that intrinsic existence is something that needs to be destroyed itself or somehow overcome, but rather we need to recognize that lack of intrinsic existence. So here, the application of the antidote is not like a hammer smashing a pot or something that is getting rid of something that was there and is then subsequently eliminated, but rather the problem is that we are grasping at this kind of intrinsic existence which is non-existent, and we need to recognize it as such.
Oh yeah. Teacher Nyangen Debaye, Jide Tando Dribbin Jursido, Utikar Sursina, Tenda Nyangen Deba Tobalas ora, Teacher Nyangen Debaye, Yande Tobalas, and Yomo Pambalas, Tenzin Balas, Nyangen Deba Tobaye, Tobaye, Jide Tando Dribbin. Oh, Jide Koa Tando, Nar. Rangshinji yoba sato gibar me juata rangshinji yomane tal dosa tonda nyangele deba tubdu sa Rangune Truban Zimba the Panguara, Rangshinki Truban Zimbe, Lord the Mab Soguara, Mado Rangshinki Yova the Mab Soguma Resigora, Go Yoma Yomanua Resida. Teaching young and Deba and Judan don't do dreaming yourself. Young Ellen Deba Tobala, Judan Koa Tondongar, Rangshinki Yoba, Judan Koa, Rangshinki Yoba. Chisu in the Taba to the Mava Chadwell, in this some quota, and start to deliver in the Yurgo Maresa, Ranshinji to a year manu chesura. Not to cut that is a duty. Or did it was? Yeah.
So then next in the first half of 72, 73, it says, therefore, ultimately the world is not lessened by someone attaining nirvana. And so here, again, it's not as though previously there were some kind of intrinsic existence that is then removed or eliminated through the application of the antidote. It's not as though the attainment of nirvana is something that involves removing or diminishing this kind of intrinsic existence that was there before, but rather it is the fact that we recognize, again, we need to eliminate that grasping at true existence or that grasping at inherent existence. It's not as though there is something that previously existed and through the application of the antidote is eliminated, but rather that intrinsic existence is something that has never been experienced. So again, this is counteracting this wrong notion that somehow it is the intrinsic existence that is removed or diminished rather than our grasping at things as being truly existent, and that true existence or intrinsic existence is something that has never been experienced, has never been existent at all.
Oh, yeah, this one. What I did that. Consider that Sabe should name in dollar Missung Basido. Tini China can and be Kunji Tamse Kimber Shesa. Take our cigarettes. Sanje Chumdendelia, Chiruba to do Choti Yora, Dinika Sura, Tadan Jiden to Tadan Demba Reversia, Kandishu Yora, Kangish Jiden. Oh, consider that Savage, Nimin Dola Misumba. Te China can and be Kunji Tamjishin Barshesa. Sometimes the Chiruba to do Jignelia, Tayo Reverse. Pumbudan Kansa to Siora, Kichi Be Kansada, Pumbuda to Zukanga, Tayo the best Yora. Sometimes Chidangi Chibabo Yor the best Tigora, Kasheli, Musum Sugar, Chida the Mayor on a bill, never saw your Ramabo. You know, sometimes Musum Sugar. Then I said sometimes the Tayo the Mayor, Kasheli Dami Sungura, Kashela Adayor Sunshagara. Da Marisana called Pengium, Koshadara Church. Going matter the collie and decay on Gomara. Time ever caught to Gomara. So cotton less on the Chiruba to Sanja Chumden, there's a kingy Omaresa. And then Tadan Jude, Tayova, Tayora, Tayomar, Tambukanechora, Tayora, Tayomar, Stigora, Chebaboyora, Yomaresa. Oh, Tende Chidisa. Sometimes less on Gomara. Kasha less on Giora. Tuje kamda samba palanya karako len jamne yagado majamne yagado kanga kamda samba kanga kingi wara angara jene ko karitina is semle chara de labshagir mado phojo karako ye ko me a ko omara to sanje ko tuje kamda samba o tezo kanga sigi wara this season samsamlia len jambi omara jiden tadan denam she shuzi kawe masu shuse kala masum je shura. What is on the Sanjay to the Colasoya Maresera, Yana Kingi or Maresera, or Tende Maresa. When you Tamja Kimbasons and Colia to Lavna Pendo Medo, some Kundus and Songiomar, Pendo Yongetul Songiora. Oh, the Caresana. Couldn't you then thought and denums the tar rounds, Tag Pumbo rounds, Tishishat and the Tigora. That the Yoris and Ameris and Ako never temper to Rongo Mara round to Yoris and then the Tilejan Cotene Marginda Tata to Pendora. 그 대선자 내송게 말해서 지대 타단 되는 수수자 마송 수수 대체나 군제 탐색해 봐 보시 대 경기 와 말해 경기 여바다 군제 탐색해 봐 보시 또 그래서 와라 뒤제 감다 삼바다 강가 챙겨라 갑갑리 안에 다 매바다 두저 강가 송게 와라 계시 개바신 송게 와라 갑리 다 여바 송게 와라 어디 깨져라도 대체 대달 사베 누민 돌아 메송바 대체나 캐남제 군제 탐색 캠바르 시에세 강게 체나 코 캐시데 랑원에 주바 랑와도 주바를 쌈네 딱지 랑와생게 달라 쌈데 튀겨라 네 캐시 매베 캐치 때는 그 구주도 때랑 거두라 대체네 무슨 버레스거라 강게 캐시 따다지데 랑와 딱바 치부 랑와 다르진 딱바 치부 랑와테 타요라 요마르 텐데 튀겨라 네 요레세나 딱바 치부 랑와테 요레 송기송구라 삼기로와 대손자 그래서 관계셔를 캐시 맵에 캐줬던 메로와 손자 다음에 다 풍부랑 신기 주베 동바 템베 너도 메로와데 어디 랑원에 주바 요마르 랑와도 주바 요마르 스텐데 템베 너도 메로와라 간사데 징게데 메로와 쓰네 롱마 템바레서 가게 마송바래 봐 그다 마송 고야 가르스네 티치 때다 사베 슈니민 돌아 메송바세 그 셰베 너도 롱게 오마르 그 펜도 요마라 너진 바도 어때 소자 마송바레서 와라 템베 너도 메로와 시그네 마템바레서 때다 사베 슈니민 돌아 메송바 땡이게 체나 kunji 탐제 캠바임바 두기를 마도 티메신바임바 두기 오마레서 와라 과시 독조 두기라 시르와 송바다 그러니까 송자 임바 두자 강라 강사 때다 때때 송자 너도 루와다 메루와 시네 송비 와레서라 송자 멤버다 송자 임바데 케네 근데 다때 콜람 toda 메도 콘데네 송비 오마레서라 셴동고비 때코나 가레스나 치다 다다 지데 라와도 투베 메바 때네 딱바 참도 여발라 소바 대주고 치다 게시케바 소요레서라 강사 가실려 갑갈 저한테도 말씀버려서라 기치단 미송베ton다 말에 게시케바 tenzi debar chuware chikde takchi rangche ta mebare rangwe ta mebare tagiwa mebare se mambun donar song yore se wara o te demara tichi te da sabe shi nimi dola mi songba te shena ke namje kunje tamje kimbar shes o ya tichi lamna tendi
So here, then, picking up with the second half of verse 73, wherein it says, when asked whether there is any end to the world, the victor remained silent. And here I'm going to read through the next verse that we'll be talking about in conjunction, where it says then, because he did not teach the profound Dharma to beings who were not suitable vessels, the wise understand that the omniscient one is indeed omniscient. So here, sometimes when it comes to the kinds of questions that are posed, particularly by non-Buddhists, like say they'll ask if they assert that there is some kind of truly established person and truly established sort of a self or a creator and such things. And the Buddha will remain silent. For example, in certain contexts, although we know that it's generally the case that the Buddha does not accept some kind of creator, there are moments where he stays silent on the answer to that question out of the kind of skillful means that recognize what is beneficial for that particular disciple. And so it's not that the Buddha does not know the answer to these questions, but rather that there is a purpose in remaining silent. So, for example, it is really a demonstration of the Buddha's skillful means that when they ask, oh, is there a limit to the world, or is there a limit to the self, and so forth, the Buddha remains silent on those points. Like, for example, if there is a school that asserts that there is some sort of permanent unitary autonomous self, when they assert such and then ask for the particular sort of characteristics of that, does it have a beginning, does it have an end, the Buddha sometimes doesn't speak on those, recognizing that you can't speak about the kind of characteristics of something that does not exist. And so, being that there is no such self, the Buddha sort of refrains from responding to that. It's not suitable to teach about the kind of characteristics of something that fundamentally is not existent. So here, there are those that are not suitable recipients for these teachings on an emptiness of inherent existence or selflessness, and the emptiness of inherent existence of the aggregates, and so forth. There are certain times where you see that the Buddha teaches no self, that there's no mine, no I, and so forth. And then there are times in which he speaks about there being a self, and that is really for those kinds of disciples who are not suitable recipients for this profound dharma that teaches emptiness, that teaches this lack of inherent existence. And so here, where it is the case that those who are critical of the Buddha would say, well, he doesn't answer questions like whether there is an end to the world or not, is really a demonstration of his not having knowledge of everything. It is the response of those who assert that actually the Buddha is omniscient, and this actually demonstrates his omniscience in that he is able to teach correctly in accordance with the needs of various disciples. If it is not suitable to teach them profound emptiness, to refute true existence and assert that all phenomena are merely nominally designated, if that is going to be harmful for a particular disciple, then the Buddha will abstain or will teach something that is suitable for their kinds of needs. So rather than seeing this as some sort of indication that the Buddha doesn't have omniscience and that he doesn't respond to these, we actually take it as being something that is demonstrating his knowledge of all, and that there is times where it's not suitable to teach particular disciples because it won't be of benefit to them. So there are times in which the Buddha does not teach that all phenomena are lacking inherent or true existence when it's not beneficial, when he can see directly that that is not of benefit. But in other places, he does extensively teach the suchness of things when it is appropriate.
뭐야? 다들 가서래. 산재기 지당 선무 동바 다 떡지 랑아친기 다 매바 다 랑아도 주바 매바 지대 풍부티 랑아도 주바 매바 저 송요래세 시다 단다 간상가 실레마 좀 마도 지당 송요래스 티셰도 대다른 예발 레베 쳐 사무 요소 제메체서 예발 레바 멜레 타바 타바 토베 주시거라 대당 예발 레바 토베 쳐 동반이 돼서 거라 다음에 봐대세 그러니까 사무테 동반이 사무테 요소 제메체서 타 로아다 체바다 와다 타바다 와라 소바 어때네 타 강도 마도 봐서 야 근데 뭐메 뭐메 뭐라 소바 카리나 강글 차쇼라 요소 제메체서 네 매바네 저 때다비 라와도 투발에 소바 텐데 매바테 다 라와도 투베 다다 타기와 직대 타기와 풍불에 소바 매바테 네 산제 남게 네 소요레세 네메파네 소산게 탐제 식과 남게 송세 도 띵지 개변 돌아 소바 테즈나리아 게시 개바 송요라 실제게 돌아 소바 테즈나 게시 개바 송요레스 티셰도 야 근데
So here then in verse 75, then it says this is kind of discussing about how the Buddha does teach this profound meaning. So in general, there are those teachings of the Buddha that refute some kind of a permanent unitary autonomous self, or in which he asserts that there is no self that is established from its own side, that phenomena don't have that kind of existence in and of their own right. And so here, this says then, thus, the all-seeing perfect Buddhas have said the Dharma of the highest good is profound, unapprehendable, and also without any foundation. So here, this the kind of phenomenon that leads to definite goodness or liberation, the Buddha has completely realized these, and it is the case that there is no sort of inherently existent basis, recognizing that there is no sort of, again, the Buddha teaches in a way that is free from the kind of extremes, an extreme of annihilation or an extreme of permanence. And so whoever comes to recognize that, again, this profound kind of dharma, which is difficult to comprehend, it is free of any of those extremes, that the basis of that, this kind of the person, for example, is not it has no basis of inherent establishment, or is not established inherently in any way. The Buddha, having seen this directly, having realized this profound phenomena that will bring about the result of all three of those vehicles, is then he has taught this extensively in the King of Concentration Sutra and elsewhere. So this is not something that is not realized by the Buddha. He has extensively taught this kind of teaching, but really it's for those who are suitable disciples.
오야. 근데 동반이라 딱배 껴대기도 다시 동반이 때나 고 짜줘요 그래서
Hmm.
아주 껴게 되러 동반이라 딱배 껴 가서 껴에 배 가서 또 땡겨 말아 어디 송그라 피카르스나 내미 최대 딱바이 내가 껴 내라 뭐 가셔서 어디 내미 최대서도 피카르스는 tembatubam semar tembatube tenje ki chidar shimba tardo ne mebe chö de so tongba ni sungora ne me chö de se tenje ki chidar songa tar shimbe ne mebe se tenje ki shimba tar ke shila ma tube ne mebe se ora chö de se tongba ni de ba tanda ne me chö de se te konzol tena ne takpa ji ora chö de takpa chewe 통마메 딱받지 그래서 가래서는 근데 통마메반에 다도 넘버 심바 라카데요를 심발로 곰데요 와서라 통마메반에 다도 넘버 심베트 랑신지 주베 내라 넘버 가신 있어라 되도다 내메 춘데 딱바에 껴 내라 가시 temba 주베 내리아 가위어라 고랑한테 주베치요 고랑원에 주베시면은 동바레 두고 삼 cheddar longora tele kaba yore sera kumshi komde ora thoma me bana ngobar ka shese ne yoda meba yoda kare yoda mele mande base rashi to bala ngoba ka shi rashi je yoba ta se ora ngare ye mebar jeba no rashi je mena che cheddar longora ngaru yoba de tongbanyi shetu sa ngaru yoba de ta meba so shage sam te sam gyora ngaru yoba de meba jeba ngaru yoba mare tambu ne meba re ina kora ngara zo ya yoba je de gora ta ne lu ngone de she wa o ta min do sam sa tende ngaru yoba de meba ke so marwa tambu ne meme de so so yoba je ba de meba shage gora rashi je meba da ngaru yoba meba simbale debe mikeba nam gesa sambalayani kabu megenge mikeba nam gene chijilodo songa pongbar yu gresere so ne me chen de tak ba ye ke o ne la ngo ga she se ne me ye da me le me ba len de ba me ke nam ne pho ma ju so te ke ba mai ba so la tong ba ni ta na te ko ju phong ba ju ku de se o ti chi tu lam na ya.
So then next, this turns then in verse 76 to the kind of faults of having fear toward this profound Dharma. So here it reads in verse 76 that, but persons who delight in foundations, not having transcended notions of existence and non-existence, are terrified by this foundationless Dharma, and being unskilled, they are ruined. So here, those who have fear toward this foundationless Dharma. So here, this Dharma, which has no sort of foundation in the clinging to, like the grasping at signs. Now, normally we see these sorts of signs of true existence and apprehend phenomena to exist as they appear. And so for those who can't sort of recognize this foundationlessness of not having any kind of true existence or can't understand emptiness properly, those kind of beings who are fearful of this. This is really because of their, as it says in the verse, persons who delight in foundations. This is referring to beings who, since beginningless time, have been clinging to this notion of a self. And due to the force of that, they have this kind of great liking or delight in this idea of there being a basis, as in a basis of intrinsic existence, that phenomena have this kind of true or intrinsic existence. And that is, again, due to their previous habituation since beginningless time. And so there are also those who hold that there was previously some kind of intrinsic existence. And again, through the application of an antidote, they make that non-existent. That, too, is a kind of view that is a wrong view that has not transgressed those extremes. And so to hold that there is some kind of intrinsic existence, holding to that kind of view of existence, or this extreme of utter non-existence, or in this way where you are holding that there was some kind of intrinsic existence, but it has been made non-existent, that it has been eliminated through the application of the antidote. Those who are unskilled in those ways, holding to this kind of mistaken notion, will bring ruin for themselves. So again, holding to those kinds of wrong views, being taught emptiness is something that will bring them ruin.
Oh yeah, that is it. Oh yeah, that is matter. Oh, that did that. Jimmy Nella, Jipa member Nella, so Shana Cheko, member Nella, Jipa Chingesura. Jimmy Nella, Jipa Tetanesa, Jimmy Nen, Jip Tetanesa, Punglas, Ram Pungre, Shan Pumba Chigresura. Tombanite, Jipa Nemare, Ina Koranza, Toma Mebana Komza, Tangarasuka, Toma Mebana Komza, Titambutan, the San, when there's some corner Jigiora. Some look on other some look on all marriage and the Koran and Mesa, some get to look at Jibachimara. When they run some Latana, oh, Tayo Marata, some look on their corner, Shiviora. Namjungarazo Rao Tayo something or Oti Messic do something, Tombacha and Shiviora. She had the tour of the Mare. Chicochkarina Zaji Sugiora. Zamazuga Shena, Jake, Omar Tibo, Tombani Karshena, Jigmaraka. Soake Omare. Oh, this on the Jimminella Jidane, Pungla Ra, Pungla Shan, Pumba Sigresora. Jiba Riba Mibenella, Jigua Mara, Munich and Jiba Trade and the Ra. Nazu Jiba Kanga, you had the carrying worse than answer Rawachi, so any telechich and Tandri Marisam, Nishigiora. Rawa to some little man and it's Yona, Tinde Jigmara. Pumbulicita, Chonata, so worked in the Chor Samada. Oh, Tanghali to the Chosam. Penachala de Chinera. Aka. 잘라다버지 현다지 톨라다 직슈지잖아 미션다지 얘네 개요 말아 개먹게 되더라 서서 잘라지나 내 잘라대 쉬어서 애들 쉬어나는 거 지그라 까봐요 말아 퍼져대 쉬니까요 말아 저도 막아서 얘네 까봐요 오지라 그때 좀 매웠어서 어떻게 인도 가서 오라 어디다 지금 내라 지다네 폰라 샤야 폰버시에서 직바 리바 마이베 내라 직바 되다 네 같이 랑신지 동바 내로지 정도 땜바나 뭐베 내로 원에 등하라서 남제 삼바나 시테 마르다서 와 랑신지 매바데레서 나스도 나랑 같이 연나 샤기도 어디디 랑원에 요 마르다서 때네 따고 삼르서 어쩐데 셰드스 거라 네 jigba mimbe nela jigba teta nese nemi nela kasere jigmi nela jigba nese dra jigba maimbe shima imba tala jigi orese ra tinde kasa to zose pongla se raya pongure rangone yore rangja yore ta takwa chibu rangwa yore range tenzi mele shechide ane tangzi di shukcheru ra ine nga sam nga ye sam nga zo sa konzo sa samlo shukcheru ra 자 라라 퐁 셴 퐁도 그래서 원래 셴 퐁을 했어 됐다 직바 멤버 내라서 근데 직바 멤버 내라 직바 대다네 랑신지 동바 내로지 ten도 땜바나 꾸란 데비시서 다들 쳇다래 데 메달 롱도 다서 나스테 걸라시라 다들 되래 쳇다와래서 지도라 꾸란 데비시 때하고 말해서 네 빵배서 근데 다음에 버튼데 따는 하고 말해서 telea pane ra ngen ro ro ta se kaji tela me ja to jin ne be ngo la ga ba tondo le de la ko de se tene a kaji tong ba ni le me ba yin na ya tene le da chung de la so ba te so yo ma re se tanye to ye se tanye se tu yin se ra 근데 지단 동반이를 매번 연나야 동조해야 돼 배트 매번 소식을 시험만 보여라 그치 들라 매자 전진 내배 뭐고 가봐 되던도 거내서 전진 내배 뭐를 서버 매번 쳐야 돼 동반이가 된다고 다 렌데를 꼬았다면 최다 lon도 지거라 렌데를 꼬안 대신 최강야 유매 강도야 소르저 민시 되게 맛이 신라 때다 저버시베 오네 제바다르라 라풍버시 신풍버시 그래서 다티 돌레 텐데 케바마 보여라 여바 인신나네 되게 메도 삼겨라 라신기 여신이 매래 매선나네 아치 선발치 레kimde 치요라 네 여바 마이 매바 마시 유미미미게 따와서라 어때 근데 단 시청가 받아 되잖아 되게 말아 어때서 라야 폰라 샤야 폰지 그래서 어때지나
So here again, discussing those then this is coming in the first half of verse 77. Terrified of that fearless state, ruined, they lead others to ruin. So here we are discussing those who really have a kind of fear around that which should not induce fear, in the sense that when we really examine this, we can see that it is our grasping at an I, this grasping at a self, that is the source of all of our fear. But it is the case that we have been habituated since beginningless time to our holding to this kind of inherently, intrinsically existent distinct self or I that has a kind of autonomous or existence from its own side. So here, if we were actually, I mean, we have regularly held there to be a truly existent self. And so when we are taught emptiness for the first time, it is something that should bring a little bit of fear, right? Just in the sense that it is striking so close to this kind of thing that we have grasped onto for so long. When we examine in sort of a logical way, we can see that it is our grasping at a self that is the source of all of this fear. But there is that potential for a kind of a reaction of fear, in the same way, like if someone takes your object, your possession, and destroys it, like hits it and breaks it or whatever, you feel this kind of like, that's my thing. What are you doing? Whereas if we see it happening to someone else's thing, we might not really care. If it's our enemy's possession, we might even feel some kind of joy that they are getting their thing destroyed. But here, this really is something that we need to connect with our own experience and make it relevant to that. But when it comes to the realization of emptiness, that's actually what is going to get rid of all of our fear. And so when it comes here, again, turning back to the text, there are those who have this kind of fear towards something that really it's not suitable to be fearful of. When they are taught that all phenomena, this nature of things as lacking intrinsic existence, they sort of disparage it. They want to abandon it because it seems so counterintuitive or so against the way that they normally hold things. Or they think that by there being no intrinsic existence, that means like utter non-existence. So here, that can kind of lead into a nihilistic kind of a view. Either they are afraid of emptiness and thereby reject that or disparage that. Or there are those who misinterpret emptiness and thereby sort of abandoning the kind of teachings that are there. They will go to lower realms. So there's that's one possibility. And then there are those who, even if they have a sort of interest in emptiness, they might even have a kind of liking for that or an aspiration to realize it. But they hold this, they understand it to be a refutation of object's ability to function, and thereby they fall into this kind of disparagement of karma, cause and effect. And this really is a kind of nihilistic sort of view. They no longer think that there is any kind of efficacy in cause and effect, and thereby just will engage in whatever, which again is as very sort of dangerous. And so when someone who, even if they have a kind of interest in emptiness, genuinely does not know how to establish functioning things, they can kind of fall into these wrong views. And so we see in the past there have been many who call themselves scholars, but they don't know how to posit this kind of non-inherent existence, but not utter non-existence. And so not really understanding it, they might assert something like the view of phenomena being both existent and non-existent, or having some kind of ineffable state of existence that is inexpressible, ineffable. And so there are many kind of wrong notions that can arise from a misinterpretation of emptiness, and thereby holding to something like that all phenomena are neither existent nor non-existent, can't be described in any of those ways. Not only do they bring about ruin for themselves, but sort of proclaiming that to others, they bring ruin for them as well.
Oh yeah. Tandelia teach the wa. Love Shivatsu song shabras, Tinde song shase. Oh, teach lotion. Uma change the banner carson dosena. No. Chase balaso, but chase and get a rita and get in the ora. Oh, Tizusura. Ne sosolia. Pemba chunjunchi, you had to dalia. Ne soja to the segi or resora. Oh, te. Subashi. Subashakis. Soja. Najeta Sayora, Tang Yubashi, that's Soja Kashi Sabina Kutibara, Subashi, sever sejes ta tikbade yorwa ina soja khashe sever eswara ina tongbani pon cheba de teleja ane tikba che yongure songara tongbani pon cheba ne simje tamjeje ane maribbe mbaseve tongbani se de simje tamjeje ko maribbe mbasejege tremeta buchire se shenarwa ta teja chebarta ko tabtinde chena de te bochim busagre se mbaseve treme 그 교란내가 제발 인베세 동반이 고았다는 소거라 제발 인베 다 레슨 되바 남지 소소소소 야구신 되바 이나 티 섭서 제고레스 낸들라 신도 사버샤오세 동반이 티 야구마레 셰다레세로 와틸 고탑교 마레세 티 동반이 됐음제 탐제를 베펜토게 녀모 참마세와 치게 차단 참마 세버시게 어떤데 개체부치레세 틸렌데바치나 ane tada chada rutala soba kasha seba tileja tikwa che yungre soba tichulana.
So then the master Shantarakshita, in his commentary, The Ornament for the Middle Way, has then said that here we kill, say, animals, birds and other things like deer and so forth, those kinds of animals, for a small benefit for ourselves and others, right? But it is still, there is the negativity of killing, right? So we engage in those kinds of activities to be able to eat. For example, we'll kill other animals. But as for the kind of non-virtue of abandoning emptiness or disparaging emptiness, it isn't just the same as like killing, which again is a non-virtuous action. But if you wish for good for yourself and other sentient beings, then disparaging emptiness is like disparaging this kind of lamp which dispels the darkness of ignorance of all sentient beings. So to do so, to speak ill of emptiness or to disparage it to others, is a much greater kind of a non-virtue. It creates a much greater harm. So those of us who wish to be of benefit or wish good for ourselves then should be extremely careful with regard to this point. So here again, if we are to disparage emptiness, even if it is just because of a lack of our own understanding, this is something that creates harm in terms of it is the cause of obtaining the form or the Dharmakaya. This is the Dharma that acts as a lamp to dispel the darkness of sentient beings. And so to disparage emptiness is really to disparage this thing, which is of such great benefit to all sentient beings.
Oh yeah. that did it also. Kebu Pumba Tedaki Sine Mipun Tedaki sta Kebulia or the Pungere so sutinde Mipumba Chigurese Kebulia Chusonsa Kebuara or Tilia Sugda Kebu Techu Sambusida Kebu Shebune Rashin Nigala Teda Chineja Mipumba or Randa Shen Samati Tombanilia Kuwa Matabashe Mipumba Chigurese Karasana Tomba Tendeje Tondo Kundushuna Tomba said Ramado Drube Tomba Resed Shanla Tujin Delne Chawsin Gazioris Tikoguyara Rangune Tomba Resed Shanjin Delnechi Yatendi Chashi Roma Yobata Koguyara Timago Shana Rangune Yomara Ranshi Yomarsud Ta Mebata Tezukanga Konani Legum Del So Sama Mebchandura O Tendeta Yomar Tendeta and any Rampon Shampoo Gudisungara O Kebu Pumba Tedaki China Mepon Tedarki Ese O Candes Pundu Udesana Kebukera Mepumba Cheurese Karzana Punguesana Kebushin Buna Rashan Nigala Rashan Nigala Tedaki Chinaja Pumba Tongba Tinsugi Tondo Kondo Chunese Ta Mepumba Cheura Chinaja Mepumba de Kadesha Mepumba Tongba Tinsugi Tondo Kondo Chunese Rangune Tongba Resed Shala Tushin Tenes Yabas Kogara Ramando Drube Tongba Resed Shala Tushin Tene Chawachin Geshi Yabas Kogara 동바 땡중기 터시 땡중 동배 터시 다 땡제디 베케시 붙이거라 땡진 레버 좋아 손자 랑원에 동겨라 랑원에 동자 땡진 레버 좋아래 되어라 땡진 레버 좋아인데 그긴다 dak시다 샤샤다 뜻을 뜻인 되네 여데 내가 진게지 여봐 고고라 초발에 땡진 되네 냠도 하루 버릇제네 지게 소소스 내가 뒤치더니 되게 저체박해는 고요라 근데 매번 봉에데 가르스네 동반이에서도 아니 자신 내배 땐데 샤마tum나 아니 봉주고라 내좀데다 참만 체달주고라 자 동배 된데 띵중을 거고래 띵중을 된데 동배 된다 거고래서 되네 봉고요 말아 대지 레버 중앙을 자지 중앙선자 동해 연계 요래 동해 요래 강가 요라 동해대 tren데 자와 샤쇼라 랑원의 동바래 요 말을 쓰잖아 동해 연계 요 말아 근데 닝지 계고 말아 닝지에 매게서 강가 매게 동해원의 연계시면은 주나 짱짱 모두 원의 연구면은 근데 닝지대 숙청 붙이고 말아 대인데 땡진 레버를 좀 알아 자제 좋아 다들 빼게 전부 제송구라 제송가 받아줘다 지단에 상계의 땡제데 마무 송구도와 상계를 때가 되는 거 몰루게 마셔날 주소주날 때가 또 땡제 레버를 좀 송백관에 뛰고도와 대인데 그 땡제데 개셔부지도 자제 좋아지 자고요라 이나 랑원에 주바 남중안 저거 섬주나 여바나시 랑와도 주바 랑원에 주바 랑신지 주바 랑게 ngoe 주바 근데 다다 셴다 이동하다 이동뭐 자다니를 소바카가 메라 티 삼로코보다 개보세 메폰 대다게 신에 메폰 대다게 개보 결랑게 메폰바 제고레세 신번에 라신 니가라 대다게 신에 제 메폰바 동바 땡중게 돈도 콘도 치바 제고레세 동바데 매베 돈도 콘도 치죠 말 땡데라 코아 담나세 땡제 데버는 조알라 자제 롱아테 요 말에서 코아 담나 아니 녜로로 로아다 되는 게 소리 지가 쳇달로도 레좀도 지금 말아 심지어는 자와다 지지 대조시라 지금 말아 땡데 랑루라 켈렌 거바니 제세 땡제 데버는 조 랑루라 켈렌 거다 요 담자 매생게 음악값이 망부여 때 랑원에 주베 담자 매시고 얼마도 지다 담자 매시고 말아 켈렌 거바니 제 랑신지 주베 동바 켈란 거바다세 랑신지 네 랑신지 주바라 준데 중세냐 랑신지 주바이네 준데 샤요 말아 랑원에 주바이네 코라 랑와와체 치투고라니 샹라 뜻인 될니 차와치고 말아 랑신지 주바라 준데 중세냐 샤사 매발 콘도 추네세 랑와도 주바 랑신지 주바 랑게 뭐 주바시네네 딱바렌도래 코샨달라 뜻인 될 고요 말아 템바니스 네 고조 템바다 템바에 템바스 아니 그제 템바니 민점 다점도 콘도 치바 대다르키 제시 담바오스야 어따티실람나 시간이더라 개부 풍부한테 진에 매봉 대다르키세 야 그래
So here, then, looking at the last two lines of verse 77, see to it, O king, that no matter what, you are not led to ruin by those already ruined. So here he is speaking to King Dechen Sangbo, that it is important, very important, not to be led to ruin by those already ruined, as in it's important not to disparage this teaching on emptiness. That here, when one realizes this emptiness of true existence, it is an understanding of phenomena as being empty of existing in their own right. And so here it is critical to not see selflessness or emptiness as referring to utter non-existence, but rather to indicating that it is empty of that kind of inherent existence. And so here, as it says, O king, so he's calling to that king, Dechen Sangpo, here, those who like would bring ruin to oneself and others, here one should be very careful with respect to understanding the meaning of emptiness. One should understand the meaning of emptiness as dependent origination. This is repeatedly emphasized. This is something that, again, dependent origination can establish this emptiness of existence in and of itself, in its own right, from its own side, by its own essence, because it gets at their being, phenomena being dependent upon various causes and conditions, dependent upon the basis of designation, dependent upon parts, and so forth. So if you don't know how to posit this kind of dependent origination in such a way as it doesn't undermine emptiness, it actually establishes it. So here, if one is then understanding emptiness as dependent origination, but then disparages dependent origination, that leads to going to the lower realms. If you have this kind of understanding that this lack of intrinsic existence or lack of inherent existence from its own side and so forth, that the negation of that then means that, oh, there is no suffering, there is no being who is suffering. Okay, well then why do I need to have compassion for anyone? Why do I need to generate love and so forth? This is extremely important to understand, that this isn't undermining the understanding of emptiness, but actually emptiness, that lack of intrinsic existence, is what establishes phenomena as being dependently originated. And their being dependently originated negates their being existent from their own essence, from their own side. So we see in many places that the Buddha is praised particularly for his teaching on dependent origination. In many of the 6 treatises on reasoning by Nagarjuna, we see that he is praising the Buddha for this specific teaching of dependent origination. And so here, those who don't understand this properly will then fall into a kind of nihilistic extreme, wherein it negates the existence of phenomena whatsoever. So here, if one is able to understand this properly, that for things that are inherently established, there's not the slightest way to posit cause and effect. That if one makes the assertion that phenomena are inherently established, there's no way to posit coherently cause and effect. And so someone who understands that properly then is able to understand how these two truths, and in particular the truth of conventional existence as being mere name or mere symbol, they are able to have that kind of understanding. Now here, this is also making the point that there are assertions that are made by Madhyamakas. We often see that there are some kind of philosophers who will criticize the Madhyamakas, saying that they don't have any assertions, that there isn't anything that they make as positive assertions. Well, they assert dependent arising. There can't be any activity that is based upon inherently existent phenomena. There is no way to have cause and effect but for a kind of contingent, dependent sort of situation. If one asserts inherent existence, true existence, that is asserting something that is permanent, that is unable to be affected by causes and effects. And so here he is imploring the king to understand this properly, such that you don't bring ruin to oneself or others.
Oh yeah. Oh, that did have to consider. Or that cable yara. Cable yarne to Tamini. Shana Mepomba Shana Nesti Tamini de Congorese. Cable message and the Tambitoa. Cookabia, Govata. Netamini Shagora, Cabulia, teacher. Oh, can do Tambu the Castle. Cable Curne Mepola. Cable Caran Tombani Shane, and it's a cheddar alone to us, so to them Mepomba Shane. Tomba the 10 days on the Hako Shane Sogora. Delaying Jitan there, 2 years, Tiny and David 2 years. Rawan to Truba Yoba Maimba, Sawan Meba Maimba. Nila meten yanda base. Ne yanda ba chishin longi wang she sanje ge longle so banashi ne kerale shegi yin so biora. Kar so to kebo she bene. Kyolan jidelen debe sulo tanyela metembe. Cheba da takpa se de rawan to trubal metemba. Ina meba maiba cheba. Tenchi debara chunga yinba. O tingi tanyi da treba uti shegin sora. O meten bes yanda be tenji dodele songba. Tata da cheda la malung che tingi da treba u. Yanda ben dode. Tingi zi kiabu da shirshingi dola sokwa na la songba te sora. Yanda ba ngi tenji do. Changten da ngi tenji do nyi ki na ne. Rikpe neba mengen. Rikpe ti tanda da yang taba iba chuk tungen ken dote le song ya re se ra. Nipa tenjen dote le song ba chi tawa shindo, ane rikpa dan longi shegi yin song ra. O, chi cher shena kari chen shegi wa sena, kebo kyo ne me pong bar jiwe le do. Tongpa ni she ne, ti tenze ki tando yabo che hako ne, ane che dan la malung she, ra. Rang pong, shen pong we, tawa tele mele che do shegi yin song do. O, te chi lam na. Sikde do o te de tamati shevra. Keba kyo ne me pon la se. Ane kile jivden de su ki debe su jira. Ni la meten yang da ba ta ni la meten ba. Chishi longe wange she se. O teni keba keran li shegi yin se. Sogdo aya o te chilana.
So here, then it turns to advising the king to train or sort of learn, particularly the two selflessnesses. So here, there's sort of something for this particular occasion, then the explanation of the two selflessnesses. And so here, then in verse 78, it reads, King, so that you might not be ruined, I will explain in accord with the scriptures this correct transcendent approach that does not rely on the two extremes. So here again, calling to the king, he is saying that he is going to explain according to the sutras. So here in particular, those kinds of scriptures such as the King of Meditative Concentration and the Heart Sutra and so forth, is going to explain this correct meaning. Again, we have these sutras that are of definitive meaning and those of provisional or meaning that needs to be interpreted. And the king and Nagarjuna is saying that he will explain them correctly according to the intention of the Buddha in a way such that you will not fall into the two extremes. So that you might, I will explain in accord with the scriptures this correct transcendent approach that does not rely on the two extremes. And the two extremes, again, being this kind of reified idea of existence. So phenomena are not inherently existent, but nor are they utterly non-existent. This is the kind of middle way that is free from those two extremes, as is presented in accordance with the scriptures. And so, again, this is something that is taught from those kinds of scriptures, the King of Meditative Concentration and the Heart Sutra and so forth. And Nagarjuna is saying that he will teach accordingly. And the purpose is in order that the king himself not come to ruin and not bring others to ruin. So this is the reason that he is explaining this.
Oh yeah. Oh, that did it. Tigitan sunam chawan de sudwa. I got a samut tole tonda de. Muti shenda rangiya neme jibe manyang bawos. Uta kebulia karishega basina. Koye jurjube tigitan sunam ki chawalen de ba sudwa. Tigitan sunam chawan de su tikpasti mikyo timba. Sunam sudwa keveche de suwara. Otunda tikpa mikyo chusnada ya vinekasure. Munde chu 다들 야 미개와 줄어서 봐 되버셔 소남제래 저 소남제래서 미개 주방봐 야야는 대원도 접견해서 봐 되서라 소남제래 그네 코에 교를 교배 되거다 되거든 내성게 주치게 봐 소남제래 저 소남되게 것도 하다미 교환해 주치기라 코에 교를 교배 되거다 Sunam Chawale Debes, Sunam Dege Modo Ladami, Kawalanchi Chuchiva, Tunda Le Yomogi Wagi Kunelane, and a Le Mikiwachan and Yason, Yomogi Kunelane, Chagwe Kunelane, Le Kewachevayina, and they Modo Lamiko security ora. They Tangzingi Shawan to cure Chagangi Shawan to cure less as no coffin security ora. Ranzinda Chadanga Shawan to Majuni Lesaya Yora, Tezo Koe Chulun Duyo Mara, Cheza de Koe Judi in the Papangura, Koe Chulun Duade, led a Nyomumbe Wangi Lesana, and he led the Koe Chulun Duyora. Nyomugi want to Mason Lesaya Yora, Tezo Koe Chulun Duyo Mara. Oh, teach you. Koe Jurjurve Tibada, Sunam Chawale Debese. Korwa ke kyurkyube, koa ngeso ke kyurkyube tikwata, koa ne ladami, tene kase kyewa ke kyurkyube, kiwe le to se sunam dengam kiwe le chera, debe kam se ladami le sopa kichigiti, le tele sunam jile sigidwa. Tate hat kubra. Sunam jile, sunam mayi bele, miyo le se sum shegiba le tele. Sunam mayi bele te ngeso le kichigit le tiche. Sunam jile sudo lada mele koala kichi kyudichera. Miyo le sudo ti koma. Samden da sungmi da tinte kiye tuzo koa barwa. Tuzo li kichi le saya chora. Tingi zi komne le sa warwa tuzo ya. Samden sungmi li kiye te tagasi le saya ma. Tingi zi komne le sa kuyo ba. Shine da pladon se de top chane ni shine le saya yora. O di ke chora. Da ti dan sunam Chavade Samo True Tendan Dance. Oh, Koya Jurjube Tigwada Sonamji, Chavale Deba Asera. Samo Tombani Komsonati, Tombani Kombewangi, Chana Shiso Chechena. Rawani Trube, Rawado Truban Betangzin, the Chadang Shawando, Dread Bakagiora, Tilen Deba Shigora, Tombani Quite. Oh, yeah. Koe Jurjube Tikwada Sonam ki Chawalan Deba Samo Ane Surable Samo Surable True Tondan Demba Asa Ore Surable Somba Koadange Sobi Tungele Kasura Koe Tungele Tuar Chebe Tab Karisungura Tombani Sungura True Tondan Demba Mudi Shanda Rangi Deba Nemeba Jigbes. Mudik to Rawan to Tube Tayo, Takji Rawan Singi Tower, Chotamje Temba Tubare, Sigra, Randes Namba Sanje Belula, Mount Samaka Temba Tuba Keling Yora. Dotebada Chitama Dante, Samtambale, Rangi Tuba Keling Yora. So Randed the Shanty Yiga Vitezo, Keling, do Shametum Gesuda. Muti Shanda Rangi Teba, Ne Mebala. ane jigba jigbe ne ma yin ba le ji ge ro tong ba ni rang ne zhe be tong ba na zhe tong ne shi ten ba me na ane ma de de she shi ge ra che da lo du ya ra o de me ba la jigbe ma nyang ba wa to zhe xie ne tong ba ni to da de nyang to ge wa ma de chor to ge wa ma de ane de de kyo la she ber cho ge bu ke rang ya kon zo ge she me tong ge ane Ladami, Koe Kewale Devalia, Drag, Tombani to the Keral Shevi in Subara, Kyola Shebar Chao Shebawas. Titan Sunam Chawande, Samo, Treve Tondande, Koala Treve, what Tombani commit. And Muti Shanda Rangaya, name Jigbe, Manabo, Jigbe name Mayimbalia, Jigbe, Konzo Mayang Tombani to the Nikaran Shevi in Sugara. Muti Shanda Rangi Rangi Teba Mawatazo. 네, maybe 내라. 직배 내 마인 발에 직배 또 동반이 된다대. 그럼 그저 만약에 소름도 왜 시험도 게돼. 시행이 예속도 야. 되잖아.
So here then looking at verse 79, it says, beyond both negativity and merit, it is the profound meaning derived from the scriptures. Other philosophers, such as the Tirthakas and even some of our own, have not tasted it, for they fear the foundationless. So here, when it comes to, again, non-virtuous or negative actions, are those like the 10 non-virtues that will lead to births in the lower realms. And then we have meritorious actions, those that are virtuous, like the positive actions of abandoning the 10 non-virtues, those 16 dharmas for higher rebirth. These are still samsaric actions in that when they lead to rebirth. I mean, negative actions will lead to a rebirth in the lower realms. Those kinds of meritorious activities lead to rebirth as a human or a god. So all karma that is motivated by our various afflictions, when we come under the control of our afflictions, whatever actions, karma we accumulate is going to lead to renewed birth in samsara. So here, if you aren't under the control of your afflictions, the actions that you do are not going to lead to renewed rebirth within samsara. So in general, we all know this, but we have those kinds of meritorious actions, positive, virtuous actions that will lead to higher rebirth within samsara, those non-meritorious actions that are going to lead to negative rebirths, and those that are kind of invariable or unmoving, in that by developing a special kind of meditative concentration, really on the basis of developing serenity and then conjoining that with special insight, one creates the kind of karmas to be born in the material and immaterial realms. So those are the kinds of karma that emptiness goes beyond, and meditation on emptiness can cause us to pass beyond karma. That is the purpose in teaching this. And so here, when it comes to this teaching on emptiness, it is something that has the power, the ability for us. It's that profound meaning which passes beyond the kind of actions that are meritorious and those that are negative. But there are those both within our own school. There are Buddhists, the lower schools, who assert really truly existent, like real true existence. For example, the Vaibhashikas and the Sautrantikas and the mind-only school, as well as those non-Buddhists who assert some kind of really truly existent self and assert inherent existence and so forth, that have not had a taste of this kind of profound meaning of emptiness. And given that they haven't sort of had a taste for that, they then still experience this kind of fear toward the meaning of emptiness, in that they have not come to a kind of understanding of it. They fear something that actually should not be feared. That is this this method that is to eliminate all of our fear. And so that again applies to both some of the Tirthakas, as it says here in the verse, and even some of our own have not tasted it. For again, they fear this meaning of emptiness. They fear the foundationless, that which doesn't have any kind of intrinsic or inherent existence. And because of that, because they are not able to sort of taste this, are then afraid where they shouldn't be afraid. And it says then, I will explain that meaning to you, the proper kind of meaning of emptiness.
Oh yeah, that is awesome.
So our time is up for today, so we'll stop there for today.
Thank you, Rinpoche. Thank you so much. And thank you, Katrina. Nice to have you back. And hopefully people will join us again next Monday at 9 a.m. Pacific. And so we'll finish with some dedication prayers.
May the spiritual teachers who lead me on the sacred path, and all spiritual friends who practice it, have long life May I pacify completely all outer and inner hindrances. Grant such inspiration, I pray. May the lives of the venerable spiritual mentors be stable, and their virtuous actions spread in the 10 directions. May the light of Lobsang's teachings dispelling the darkness of the beings in the 3 worlds always increase. Idam Guru Ratna Mandala Kam Niryatayami. Due to this merit, may we soon attain the awakened state of Guru Buddha, that we may be able to liberate all sentient beings from their sufferings. May the precious Bodhi mind not yet born arise and grow. May the born have no decline, but increase forevermore. In the snowy mountain pure land, you're the source of good and happiness. Powerful Tenzin Gyatso Chenrezi, may you stay until samsara ends.
두째 난게나.
뭐야?
Recording stop.